Добрий день.
Good afternoon. I want to thank everybody who joins us. My name is Olga Tamanova and Ukraine Media Center Ukrinform continues its operation. Today it's day 379 of the full-scale invasion of the Russian aggressor of our homeland. During this night we suffered another massive missile strike by the Russians, and joining us online right now is Yuriy Ignat, the spokesperson of the Air Force Command of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, who will give us more details about this situation. Good afternoon, Mr. Yuriy. Good afternoon, Mr. Yuriy. So in brief, we know that you're giving a lot of comments about this night attack today. So what were the regions which were mostly affected by the attack, how many launches they were, and how many missiles were downed by our air defense forces? Well, you better ask the military administrations as to the regions. They have a very strict communication about the damage of the facilities. You know, it's a sensitive information. The enemy should not obtain any excessive information, so you should rather go through those channels of communication. As of today, during that missile attack, there was 81 missiles launched from different launch sites, different types. 8 different types of missiles were launched in total, which were targeted in different regions of Ukraine. The enemy used different directions from the south, from the north, and from the east. They used the equator of 3 seas, the Caspian Sea, Sea of Azov, and Black Sea, from where the enemy launched the tactical and strategic aviation, and also the missiles were launched from the marine vessels in the Black Sea. The enemy also used land rockets. In fact, they were the anti-aircraft missiles S-300, which were launched against the areas along the front lines. 13 such missiles were launched in total against Ukraine this night. Out of the 48 missiles, of the F-48 cruise missiles, 34 were destroyed. They were X-101, X-555, so 34 out of 48. And other missiles were X-59 and F-31B. They were downed, so to say, because they did not reach their targets, because our forces applied certain measures to counter them. They were launched from a Sukhov 35 fighters, and our anti-air defense forces worked quite efficiently in their regard. We know that Tupolev 22 were launching X-22 missiles from southern and northern direction. So there was a massive missile attack plus 8 Shahed drones, 4 of which were destroyed. And what's special about this attack is the application of Kinzhal missiles. So now there is a MiG-31 takeoff registered, which can carry this type of missiles, and there was no case of application of this big number of ballistic missiles of this Kinzhal type, which are usually carried by airplane. That's a ballistic strategic missile which can damage the target from a very long distance. So as MiG-31 takes off, we understand that all the map becomes red. So do we understand that all the Kinzhals that were launched this night, they were all targeted at the capital? Well, I don't want to promulgate this kind of information because I have to have more details. I think we can do it later. As to the duration of this missile attack, it seems like every time they're becoming longer and longer. Is it a change of tactics by the Russians, or what's going on? Well, it's not about the tactics, but it's about their planning, how they planned this attack. For example, first they launched the Shahed drones, and then after certain period of time they added tactical aviation, and then strategic aviation, and then the ships. So they had a very strict breakdown of what goes after what. Why do they do it? Is to disperse our efforts, exhaust our air defense forces, as they wanted to inflict the strike with different types of missiles from different directions, which complicates the work of air defense forces. And those missiles that we can down, they were damaged, they were downed, and even with the intensity, even with such an intensity, 34 out of 48 is quite a good result, plus the Shaheds, don't forget about them. Well, now there is an air raid alert. In effect, MiG-31 is in the air, so we understand that probability of the repeated attack is quite high. Well, I cannot tell you right away because we are being listened to a big number of people. Air raid alert is a threat, and we understand that there is a threat all the time, but it's up to everybody whether to go to a shelter or not. Dear colleagues, your questions please. Marina Kožuchar, Ukrinform. Mr. Yuriy, Slovakia was the first country who agreed to give MiG-29 to Ukraine. Do you have any information of when they will be already in the ranks of our Air Force and how it will contribute to our air defense capabilities? Well, the fact that we are being given the Air Force systems is the very good indicator, just as we've seen the movements in from the same direction from Slovakia. In the same way, the question of transfer of tanks of Ukraine has already moved forward. The other thing is in what condition they are, how we will be, to what extent we will be able to use them, but any help, any support with any military material is obviously good news to us, because we will be able to reinforce our capabilities with those planes that you mentioned. In the majority of cases, that aid will be as donor components. We have MiG-29 fighters in our ranks, and together with Sukhoi-27 they fulfill their duties, their tasks, but the airplanes should be maintained. Sometimes they are being downed, unfortunately, so those airplanes being transferred to us may become a part of a maintenance package which will keep our airplanes ready. We don't have an opportunity to manufacture those unique components in our manufacturing facilities because all those aircraft we have in our ranks, they were manufactured back in Soviet era, and the components are manufactured in Russia. But that will help us to maintain our aviation always ready. But as to their combat application, I reiterated multiple times that the youngest airplane in our ranks is dated back in 1991, year of manufacture, and it's clear it was built back in the Soviet era. And there are older planes, they are morally and physically obsolete, they work on the brink of their capabilities. Actually, the pilots, they do miracles on those aircraft, and when they counteract the enemy who is 5 times stronger in terms of aviation than us, from when they launch their aircraft from those airfields that they operate in. And technologically, Russians prevail in terms of aviation. So it's clear that we need better machinery than MiG-29. MiG-29 does not have that broad range of weapons, and it's not that kind of plane that can efficiently counteract the enemy in the air and to destroy the targets efficiently. Those aircraft, they use obsolete Russian weapons. And why we need, for example, F-16 aircraft? Because we need to protect our Ukrainian skies, to defend us against those cruise missiles that we were attacked with this night. And the Western equipment, thanks to their powerful radars, thanks to the efficient modern rockets, they can counteract both cruise missiles and Shahed drones to protect the Ukrainian skies. And another thing is to drive away Russian aviation away from the Ukrainian borders, that aviation which launches the guided bombs, the bombs that have wings and they can fly dozens of kilometers, and thus the Russian airplanes don't go into the area where they can be downed by our air defense forces. So we need to engage the long distance air defense systems. We need the modern fighter jets in order not allow the Russian aviation close to our borders. And another thing why we need the Western fighter jets is the prevalence in the air to disrupt their logistics, the supply of their weapons and ammunition, which will help occupy Ukrainian lands and return them to under control of Ukraine. Mr. Yuriy, we're all waiting for the arrival of Patriots. Can you give us a little bit more detail on that? When can we expect them to arrive in Ukraine? Well, you see, everybody expects them, and there are even statements from some government officials, because our expectations exceed all the hopes. It will happen shortly. We've seen the pictures already. We've seen the pictures published by our partners who already give some information, however concise. But still, they confirm the fact. They say that the Ukrainian warriors, Ukrainian air defense personnel master those systems in a very prompt way. Why so rapid? Because the motivation is pretty high to get back home shortly and to beat the occupier, just like IRIS-T, just like NASAMS do it. They were drawing tridents on their material, counting the number of down targets, and there's a lot of tridents already on those NASAMS, believe me, and we would like to appear more and more of them on Patriots. Just like recently, for example, they were able to down a Sukhov 34 aircraft. It will happen shortly. No one will disclose the term, obviously, but as soon as we see a downed airplane in the statistics, which was downed with the help of Patriot, everybody will start understanding that they are already here. Thank you for this broadcast. Thank you for finding time to join us. I'm reminded you joining us was Yuriy Ignat, the spokesperson of the Air Force Command of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, and our next briefing is at 13:30. Joining us will be Maxim Kozitsky, the military governor of Lviv region, and we will be talking about the consequences of the night rocket attack on the Lviv region. So bear with us, trust in our armed forces, and glory to Ukraine.